Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time again for our favorite show. This Week with Wendy, the one show that shows you the real SoCal estate of mind. Hosted by our very own Wendy Ross, who after years of working in real estate brokerages in Silicon Valley, Orange County, elsewhere, she decided, maybe it's time for something different, and thus was born Veracity Real Estate. The one place where you can get real bespoke client advocacy at all price levels. Something you just don't see much here in pricey markets like Southern California. And through it all, she's built a company of data-driven experts, investment advisors, truth seekers, truth tellers. Truth be told, we can't wait to hear what she has to say. But today, just looking at the title, I don't know, Wendy. The title of the show I was handed was, what was it, Lipstick, Champagne, and Underwear? You're going to have to explain that one first.
Well, yeah, I'm back for another week of market analysis.
Yes. What is lipstick, underwear, and champagne? Champagne, maybe.
Well, as Kara said,
you have to wait.
Bring the data, but make it sexy. So
you do that every week.
And we're talking about three of my favorite things: underwear, lipstick, and champagne.
Okay.
But candidly, this is the title of my end of November market report. So that's coming out very, very soon, and we're recapping it today. And trust me, I'm gonna explain it. I'm gonna bring it all together. And to do that, I've got the lovely, trusty Kara Stewart here with me, my Chief Brand Officer, to help us make it all make sense.
Hello, Wendy, and hello, Paul. And of course, there is a connection among real estate and consumer goods like lipstick, underwear, and champagne. First of all, they all cost money, and they affect our moods. Because a good lipstick can brighten you, scratchy underwear brings you down, and champagne makes everyone happy, right?
Wow.
Well,
okay.
most people happy.
That's a stretch, but okay.
All
I'll
right.
go there.
Well, anyway. But most important to today's show, these are three common and credible indexes that we use to measure economic health. So Wendy, in her data analysis, does look at these seemingly random indexes to help her decipher the data and to bring her analysis to her market reports and to the show every week.
You mean somebody tracks this stuff? Like we used to track the height of skirts. That was supposedly indicative of something. If your skirts go up, that was good news. Skirts went down or whatever. Here.
Yeah, skirt lengths are still something that they track. But yeah, this is, and it's not just me when she says, I track it or we track it. This is something that economists around the world pay attention to.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, because it's tried and true
little
information.
Nuances here.
The humanness and the human trends, there are certain fundamental things like underwear, and lipstick, because for women, for the longest time, we weren't considered dressed unless we left the house with our lipstick on.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
So my wife's still like that, yeah.
I am too. So it's an interesting thing. So we're going to get into the weeds a little bit and explain why these three indexes or indices are so important and tried and true. And one of them, my favorite, of course, because I'm a girl, is the lipstick. And whenever times get tough or not, even when things are tight, we're going to go and buy that lipstick. It's the one little pick-me-up we can count on, we can squeeze into the budget. So, that's going to happen. So what they do is they watch the trend of lipstick sales. And what's interesting is that when money gets tight, lipstick sales don't fall. They actually surge a little bit because it's an indication of it's that little luxury that everybody is like desperate to get to have that moment. And so, when lipstick sales soar, things aren't quite as rosy as the ladies' lips are.
So everyone is buying a lipstick, or most people who wear makeup would be looking at this little indulgence.
Right.
What about colors, though? Isn't there something tied to the color psychology and this index?
This is what I find most fascinating. Yes. So when times get tough, women tend to buy bolder, deeper shades. Like they're trying to make a statement of everything's fine, the whole stiff upper lip sort of thing. And then when things are more comfortable and there's more economic certainty, you're going to see more of the nudes and the pale shades. So think about the last 10, 15 years, the rise of the Kardashians and their whole family getting into the makeup trade. Nude lips are basically their trademark.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're seeing with
Kylie's nude lip kit.
Exactly. And what we're seeing is that this continues now. So as people are starting to do, wrapping up 2022, taking a look at the economy, forecasting for 2023, we can be comfortable in knowing that nude lips are still in.
Okay, so that bodes well for us. One interesting thing you mentioned about women turning to rosy lips or red lips or brighter lips like that. Right now, we do have this feeling of, as you said, Paul, your wife won't leave the house without putting lipstick on. Wendy, I know you also adhere to get ready is to put on makeup.
Hmm.
Do you know where early women and red lipstick came in, at least here in America? Because women of a certain type were the only ones who wore makeup. And so
Oh.
if you were a sensible woman
Hmm.
or a respectable woman, you didn't wear makeup.
Hmm.
However, as the women's suffragette movement and women wanted to be seen and claim their independence, they'd put on bright, bold lipstick as this protest. So
Wow.
I loved the connection that you made too of women putting on bolder, richer colors,
Hmm.
almost as facing forward of we can weather this too.
Yes. Well, thanks for a little history lesson, but it makes
Yeah,
complete sense when you bring it full circle.
I love that.
Well, there you go. See?
All right, let's talk about something else pretty saucy
Hmm.
here. Let's go on to men's underwear, if you would.
Yes.
I'm going to have to leave the room.
No blushing. We're talking about economic data, Paul.
It's actually Alan Greenspan that put this one on the map because he had been watching it as an indicator. And here's a quote. He said, on the few occasions, well, everyone needs men's underwear. And so this particular index is usually quite stable. And so on the few occasions where it does dip, that means that men are so pinched, they're deciding not to buy underwear. So he watches it very carefully. It's actually called the Haynes Index. So, and what we're seeing is in the last measurement, men's underwear sales aren't soaring, but they're not dipping either. It's just kind of status quo. That we're lagging a little bit behind 2021, but sales of almost everything is lagging behind 2021. So this is not a cause for concern.
Now, what about the movement to go commando?
I'm not even going
Oh,
to go there.
Paul.
I'm not making a social experiment here. I'm talking about market indices. I don't know what
Okay,
you're
all right.
talking about.
All right.
Well, we
okay.
did say saucy.
Oh,
Saucy,
you said
yeah.
saucy.
Oh, I did. That
So
was
you
me.
think that's really that if times are that tough when you stop buying underwear, that's a real indication that
Yeah.
you're really pinching because
Yes.
that's the last thing you're going to stop buying is
Right.
underwear, right?
Right. So, and think about it. Women, usually in marriages, women most often buy them. If the women are not buying them, things are tough because they're really watching that household budget. So, yeah, Alan Greenspan, if he believes it, I believe it. You know, he's a smarter economist than I'll ever be.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. This is the one I'm most concerned about, Wendy. What about our bubbles?
Because she knows champagne is like one of my major food groups.
Yes, it is. And it's becoming one of mine thanks to you. And I'm reading these reports around the world
Yeah.
that champagne sales are dipping.
It's really interesting.
The bubble is bursting.
Oh.
Ouch. Okay. This
Okay,
one,
dad joke.
This one is the Moet Index. And for those of you who thinks it's Moet, it's not. Moet was actually, was it an English or an Irish monk? But not French. So it's Moet et Chandon. In any event, this is the Moet Index. And they chose that because it's totally a middle market brand. So it's in the middle. It's the median, if you will, of champagnes. So according to Moet's global index, their sales have suffered relative to inflation. And what's interesting is that in the United Kingdom, it did even worse than the global average, which is not surprising. They had a little bit of political upheaval recently, so they're kind of restoring what's going on with their currency and whatnot. And the EU overall also suffered in terms of champagne sales relative to their inflation. So I was a little bit concerned.
Well, how are we looking here in the United States?
Well, here in the good old USFA, just like lipstick and men's underwear, actually, we're totally stable with our champagne sales. And it might just be me and Kara.
Holding up the.
We might be carrying the torch for the
carrying
entire
away, yeah.
country. 'Cause
You're welcome, America. We
That's
are
right.
doing our part to serve our country.
doing our bit to stabilize this market
But you know
index.
that's true. You think of champagne as a celebration,
Right.
And if there's nothing to celebrate, then are you popping a cork? Are you just
Right.
drinking champagne? Like I don't know, champagne really. I mean, there is some super expensive stuff, but champagne isn't really out of affordable.
Right.
You can get it at Ralph's or whatever.
Right.
It's
And
not
Moet
like-
is one of those every man's champagne kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the least expensive.
It's not cold duck.
It's not cold duck.
cold duck, right?
It's not Cooks. I'm not trying to call anybody out. I'm just saying.
Right.
But no, it's not Piper Sonoma either. So, yeah, it's affordable. And think about it. To your point, Paul, we celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, weddings,
New Year's, everything.
Of course,
right.
the holidays are upon us, and so we,
Right.
we would expect to see a surge of champagne sales now. So I found it really reassuring that there weren't concerns yet this far into the year about American champagne sales, because it really is a vital index and gives us an indication not just of what's happening now, but what consumer sentiment is going forward. Because we tend to rein things in before we think the crisis is here.
Right.
So,
Can you explain one other thing here? This isn't on your index here, but gasoline. What happened to gasoline prices? Before the election, they were $7, $8 a gallon, like I've never seen in my life. It seemed unsustainable. Last night I filled up with gas, 420.
yeah. See, I filled up for 460 today and thought I was, striking a win, but
Yeah, well, this was well, this was the cheapest, whatever the 87.
Yeah.
The,
Oh, okay.
The lowest because I've got a littler car and I can use the cheaper gas.
Got it.
And I just thought, when did this happen? When did it shot up, and when did it suddenly drop down?
I am not an economist. I'm a real estate market analyst.
Right.
So I don't know. Kara, I've heard people opine about how they were hoarding, countries were hoarding back stocks of barrels and then they released it. I don't know. It could be political machinations. I don't know.
I think it's all three. There's simple supply and demand, and what the ramifications, the lingering ramifications from COVID. Then there were the there's political maneuvering that occurred. And then also remember here in California, and forgive me, I don't remember the name of the tax, but we do have a summertime tax on gas so
that's
that
right,
it
it's
can
seasonal.
be, so it can be more environmentally friendly. So that roundabout, I think it's September, October, November, that tax goes away because it's a different type of fuel that we're allowed to have for sustainability. And now that we mentioned that, I'll have to put it in the show notes for the next one so that we can explain this correctly. But yeah, Paul, there are a couple different factors with that. But, for all of these, as you said, gas prices are going down, which is going to make people feel more confident, especially going into the holiday buying season, or, we're almost there, and planning for 2023. And from the other indexes that you mentioned, lipstick, by the way, Wendy is wearing nude lipstick. Yes,
I
so
couldn't
she
tell.
is confident.
I couldn't tell because it was.
Because it was nude. It's almost like camouflage, right? Yeah. So the lipstick index, the men's underwear index, and the champagne index. America has fared better than most markets. So what does this have to do with real estate?
Well, it's interesting because we are faring better on a global scale, even though it may not feel like it. But to Paul's point, gas prices have come down. This morning, I heard reports that inflation came in a little bit lower. And so things are calming down and we're settling into a healthier market because we came out of what was crazy town. 2021 was bananas. I think we can all agree about that.
Selling houses in one day at record prices. Come on.
You don't even get me started. So what's interesting though is that even though in addition to America performing well economically on a global stage, California is also doing particularly well. And so all the doom and gloom sayers like it's too expensive, businesses are fleeing the state, individuals are fleeing the state, no one wants to be there. We actually now, well, actually, as of this moment, we probably already have overtaken Germany in terms of now becoming the fourth largest economy on the planet, the state of California.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right?
And
So,
didn't I read that the fluctuations in the market? There have been places in the country where housing has gone down significantly. It shot up significantly and it started to come down.
like
People-
Boise, Idaho. Yeah.
Yeah, like Boise, Idaho. I think was Nashville, Tennessee one or other.
Somewhere in Tennessee, Park City, Utah, I believe.
That had been really hot markets. This is like the outflow. If we're going to leave California, the big markets, we're going to go to places like that. And for the simpler lifestyle and affordable land and
Yeah,
everything.
well, the
here.
places where the values went up 50% during COVID, which totally outpaces the economy in the country, those are the places that are having the greatest retrenchment already.
Right.
And that's already begun a little bit here in Orange County. There were certain communities, because real estate is hyper local, we can't paint with a broad stroke. We just can't. But there have been small communities here that had higher than average increases in values, and those have retrenched a little bit. But that's what happens in any market. It's like waves. Waves come in and they go back out, and they come in, and there are these, fads, if you will, in certain communities are, super sexy for a minute, and everyone, like a herd stampedes in there and they buy and they drive the prices up, and then it calms down. That's normal. So, and that's what we're seeing here. So in California overall, we're seeing that experts think that we're going to have about 8.8% reduction in value for the state. But again, you have to consider it's a very big state. It's larger than many countries. We really need to look at the county and the city and the neighborhood.
And with that, so we're overtaking Germany, or we probably already have, as being the fourth largest economy in the world. But there are other things that are making California, or because of this really, is making California a right choice for real estate right now. Your upcoming report talks about, for example, the unemployment rate and job growth. What did you find with your research?
Well, what I found really encouraging was that Orange County in specific, because again, we drill down. We've talked about global, national, state, and I live and work in Orange County. So this is really my primary focus. And when you look at Orange County, depending upon whose reports you read, and I don't know how they parse the data, but we're at between 2 and 2.8% unemployment, which is really, really low. And the country is riding at 3.5%. So we're below the country's average. This kind of spits in the face of people who say everyone stampeded out of the state and all the jobs left the state. No, they didn't. And our 2022 job growth so far has been spread across multiple sectors. So we can't say, oh, the pandemic caused this and this alone to rise. No, I mean, we've got several different sectors, between professional services and restaurants, med tech, biotech. There's just this vast array of jobs, which speak to a very healthy economic and labor environment. So, and then what cracks me up, remember, Paul, when Jonathan Lasner was on the show, and he was making me crazy, and he was saying, everybody's leaving California, just wait, the population is plummeting, and all these houses are going to come on the market.
Yeah.
Remember that? He himself wrote an article in October saying the myth of the Exodus was grossly overstated. I'm like, excuse me?
And who is perpetuating that myth?
The author. I love you, Jonathan, but that had to be fun eating that crow, wasn't it? How'd that taste?
Former journalist here will always support my fellow journalists, but that was
You know,
it
the-
made us chuckle.
The one thing that nobody takes into account that I think is a driver here in Orange County, and I know this sounds silly to anybody outside of the county, is the lifestyle.
Oh, for sure.
People don't live here just because of the beach or just because of the sun. It's kind of a combination of the perfect everything. People who live here because they like the way it's laid out. They like the kind of atmosphere that's here. They like the weather. They like the proximity to everything. It seems to have just the perfect blend for a lot of people, me included.
Agreed. The topography and the fact that it's coastal, because so many people, particularly during COVID, wanted to be out on the ocean away from people.
Right.
And
the mountains. I mean, you've
Yeah,
got
we've got all of it.
all this stuff kind of right here, and it's the perfect weather.
Totally.
And it's the perfect, it's all laid out intelligently and designed, and it seems to be everything you're looking
and
for
that,
here. And
that exactly speaks to the point of, we don't have people stampeding out of the state because it is glorious to live here. But the numbers that were being reported, it's like, this many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, I don't even know the number, of people left the state. We're such a big state with such a massive population. That was 1.6% exodus. The lowest in the country, people. So yeah, we have people leaving. We knew that we had reached a tipping point in terms of population here. And now our population is going to continue to decrease, not just because of exits, but also because our birth rate has gone down. Our
Yes,
relationship to migrants coming into the country has been tainted somewhat.
right,
That's political. I'm not going to get into it, but I think we all agree the immigration has been somewhat stalled.
right.
So yeah, our population is going to go down. Oh, thank goodness, because we have increased housing formation going on as the millennials get older. So,
Just curious, of the 1.6 who left the state, did you have any of them among your client base?
during the last couple of years of COVID, I had 3 families leave the state. He said that's like 1 per year, and 1 family so regrets it they're currently shopping to come back. So,
Let us back.
Because I've known people that actually turned down bigger jobs to stay here.
yeah.
There was something about living in not just Southern California, but particularly Orange County that seems to have like the perfect, it's the Goldilocks thing. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's kind of like just right.
Agreed.
And people seem to like that, and it's hard to find anywhere else. So yes, can you get a bigger house, a cheaper house somewhere? Absolutely. But does it come with all the amenities that you're used to? I don't know.
And even though you cited someone who turned down a higher paying job somewhere, there are a lot of high paying jobs here.
Oh,
Yeah,
There
let's
really
talk about
are.
that. I mean,
Right.
we have OC unemployment rates are low,
Mm-hmm.
salaries are high,
Mm-hmm.
home prices are expected to remain stable for the foreseeable future.
Yes.
But as you've touched upon here, our demographics also are a background factor that is leading to the fact that people aren't leaving.
The silver tsunami again.
Yeah.
You know, and
then we were all expected, me included, were expected to sell our houses and go somewhere.
right,
And we
go
didn't.
into a retirement home, leave the state, move to Arizona, whatever, whatever. But no, the silver tsunami isn't going anywhere. And even though the millennials are now a larger class in terms of numbers of people, this is still a giant number of people in terms of the silver tsunami that aren't leaving and they're not turning over housing. And the millennials they need the inventory. So this is part of what's keeping a lid on prices falling. I mean, prices aren't going to fall here because we just don't have enough houses for all the people who want to have households here.
And part of that silver tsunami is that, Generation X is moving into that, younger baby boomers. We don't see ourselves as those middle age, we need to start to retreat. I mean, we're the ones still wearing motorcycle jackets
And Lululemon.
refusing to grow up and saying we're staying in our home
Yeah.
and, starting new careers and businesses in our 50s.
Yes.
There's just a different demographic and thought process.
And the aging, as we age here in Orange County, we're the most affluent group. Mm-hmm. They can afford to stay and they can afford to hire help. They do not have to go anywhere. And one thing that we all learned during COVID is you can have everything brought to your door. If you need to have a
that's
nurse
the
come to
truth.
your door,
Right.
you got it. You need to have medical equipment brought to your door, you got it. Groceries, done. Drugs delivered, pharmaceuticals, people. Yes. So the whole notion of how we had to adjust our lifestyle as we aged out of our home is gone. We don't age out of our homes anymore, and they're not.
So is it the end of retirement? At some point on the higher end, yes. If you're 90 and you need full assistance, assisted living or something here.
Yeah, and my guess is retirement communities are going to become very bifurcated, like the rest of our economy. That's going to be very exclusive and expensive facilities, and very, you've got income that comes from the government facilities, and nothing in between. In between, it's going to be more the sandwich generation.
We had somebody from Parentis Health. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They have a lot of different retirement communities here in Orange County, from the large traditional ones to more smaller boutique kinds of group homes and stuff here. And they talked about that at length, and the industry's really having to try and figure out what's the world want and what can people afford and where are they going to do it?
Right?
All those questions.
Right. And Orange County is going to be struggling with this as we go forward. And in 2023, we're going to have some gerontologists on to talk about that, because this question is only going to get larger. But for now,
All right. So this is a show is the real talk about the SoCal state of mind, and every week you get into the numbers. So no different here. The backdrop of these indexes and the psychology of why people stay here is important. But let's get into all of the data that supports that position. What did you see in November here in Orange County?
it was interesting. I expected us to have more inventory than we did. We had 40% fewer homes this November than we normally have in November. Yes, we had more homes for sale this year than we did last year, but again, last year was a unicorn. But compared to historic norms, and mind you, by historic norms, I'm only going back 10 years, because our market has changed dramatically in this last decade. Prior to that, there would have been even more inventory on the market, but we're not going to look at that because that's gone. So historic norms,
Because
just
that's when they were building the large tracts of homes and stuff.
and people had a different emotional relationship to real estate. The psychology of the buyer and seller influences the market more than you might think. And that's something that I'm threading through this end of November report. Like, understand, these are the numbers and this is the data, but what buyers and sellers believe to be true may not jibe with the facts. And here are the facts. We had 40% fewer homes for sale in November. So you would think, okay, we probably sold 40% fewer of them, right? No, we only sold 30% fewer homes than we normally would. That speaks to really good, strong demand. We again sold more of less. So that is not an argument for prices falling, because they're not. There's still enough demand to keep this going. And you need to understand that when headlines scream, home sales are falling, they're saying the number of homes sold is falling. They're not saying home prices are falling. However, they will. And what they're going to say is median price is falling. Well, we've talked about this. Rick Sharg and I talked about this last November. He's going to come back next week and talk with us about this again. The median price in Orange County, I believe, and he believes, was artificially inflated because we sold more homes priced above $5 million in the last 2 years than ever by a bunch in our county. And median is just the middle. So when you sell more of the high-end stuff and less of the low-end stuff, the middle price goes up. And we're seeing more lower price homes come on the market and fewer of the higher price market. So the median price should fall.
Now, I'm already hearing those who are proclaiming doom and gloom saying, but isn't it possible that we're at the tipping point? You know, if enough buyers decide not to buy and enough sellers panic and flood the market, couldn't the tide change quickly?
It could. It absolutely could. And all I can do is tell you what is real, what the data is, and what logic dictates.
Okay, let's
Home
go.
buyers and sellers aren't always logical.
Yep, but let's go to some of that data then. You follow industry analysts and economists. What are you reading and hearing for them? You picked up a couple of really interesting stories and anecdotes in this month's market report.
I did. Well, and just to touch on data, Lawrence Yun, he's the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, and his most recent prediction, he said, given the very high home prices, so he knows we really pushed California up high, his prediction is that next year prices will be effectively neutral, meaning they're not going to fall, but they're not going to go up. That's exactly what I've been saying, people. At the beginning of this year, last year, I said 2023 is going to be flat. And it's going to be flat. And what does flat mean in the state, or particularly here in Orange County? It doesn't mean everyone's home value is not going to change. It means some will go up and some will go down. And overall, it's going to be the same as last year. So it's going to be flat. And then the economists at CAR, the California Association of Realtors, they say the same thing. I mean, again, they were the ones that said they think statewide that values may adjust downward 8.8%. But I would argue we've already seen most of that adjustment from the peak last May. We've already adjusted down 10%. So to think we're going to go down another 9%, I think a 19% gross drop is not going to happen in Orange County. We just have too much demand and too little housing. And as, again, Rick Sharga said, I love that man, to build a housing unit here, whether it's an apartment or a condo or whatever, it's costing builders $100,000 per living unit before they break ground. It's just cost prohibitive. And then the NIMBYs are still coming out. I don't care about, Senate Bills 9 and 10 that meant that we should be able to build additional dwelling units on our R1 zoned lots. Still, on a city level, they're not letting it happen. So we just, again, we're stifled. We don't have enough doors.
That trend didn't seem to take off. Everybody was so terrified that everybody was going to throw up a ADU, a little granny house in the backyard. And in my neighborhood, I haven't seen one.
That's
built.
because the cities aren't allowing it.
Yeah.
And the state is now suing the cities and saying, you don't have a choice. This is the law. Damn it. Do it. And I'm with them. It's like, people, if you don't want anything to change, go crawl under a rock. Get the heck out of my county. If you want to have people here to cook your meals at restaurants and to, do your laundry, mow your lawn, then get the heck over yourself and give them a place to live. I mean, I am just so intolerant of the NIMBY nonsense. Moving on.
All right,
I'm
then.
with you. I don't know how you can sustain. It can't just be all affluent and old people.
No, it's not.
But-
When the Irvine Company designed like the master plan communities like Irvine here.
Right.
it
It's
was
cradle to
just
grave.
Cradle to grave. So
Yeah.
they had a place for everybody
Right.
throughout
Well-
the cycle.
Yeah. Moving on.
All right, but as part of that influx of more affluent buyers, people went to the beach. They're not going to be giving up these homes right now either.
Well, and that's what I keep saying. Yes, home values may fall, and yes, they will fall most where they went up the most. And in Orange County, a very conspicuous sector where they increased crazy was the 5 million and up, the super luxury homes. But those are the people who came here and this was their second or their third home. Many of them paid cash. If they didn't, they put a whole bunch down, and they are sophisticated enough to say, well, I'm not going to sell at a loss. I'm just going to wait till the market, adjusts and comes back up to my value. These homes aren't going to come on the market as fire sales. One or two might, but that's the nature of things. I mean, there's always between.
What's the record these days? Or give me some idea. What's the biggest of the big?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
I mean, it used to be if you got a $20 million house 20 years ago. That was a
Paul,
lot.
I have no idea.
It must
Well,
be.
let's go into what the market report was saying, actually, Paul.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, another thing that we talked about all real estate being hyper local, you're reporting about housing supply.
Right. Right.
Yeah. What did you finding there? What are you finding there?
Well, like I said, we don't have enough because we can't afford to build it. There's nowhere to build it. The NIMBYs aren't letting us build new homes on their lots as the state dictated that they should. And again, this, our aging population isn't vacating their homes to put it on the market. Instead, because they were smart enough to refinance and get really low mortgage rates, even if anyone of any age these days needs to sell a house to move into one that's more appropriate for their lifestyle, 9 times out of 10, they're not selling the departure home. The rates are just too attractive. They now have too much equity. They couldn't afford to trade it for something like it. For whatever reason, they're buying something else because they need to, because their lifestyle dictates that. But they're keeping the departure home in the family, or they're renting it out. So we're going to see more rental units come on the market, but fewer homes for sale. And for people who think that more rental units means that rents are going to go down, that's naive. It just is naive, because when the times get tough in real estate, rental rates tend to go up. And the median rental price right now is $4,000.
Wow.
$4,000 for a 2-bedroom. It's a lot of money. We no longer have the world where during COVID, it was literally less expensive to own a home than it was to rent one. And in Orange County, that doesn't happen very often. Now it is not less expensive to own it than to rent it. However, when you buy something, especially when you get fixed rate financing, you've controlled your housing expense for presumably the next 30 years, right? Or however long you own it. With rent, you don't have that. With rent, the market is going to dictate how much your housing expense is. So if you really want to control your expense and have a tax write-off, renting isn't the answer for you. And buying a home isn't the answer for everyone. I have said, and Kara has heard me many times, giving that human being a house will be like giving them a pony. They don't know what they're doing. It's house abuse, and that's not a pretty thing.
Do we need a pony index now?
Oh my God.
That would be it. I'll bet that would work.
I'm going to look for one.
We need one.
I'm looking for a pony index.
If not, Wendy, you are creating it.
Yeah. So back to the general inventory mix that we have here. We're going to have a few more homes come on the market. We're going to have a tiny few number of homes come on that are distressed sales. And people remember when headlines say foreclosures have surged 100%, that's because there were zero. There was a government moratorium. Banks weren't allowed to foreclose. Therefore, they did not. And they were able to renegotiate and extend. So anybody who went into a foreclosure, even last year, 85% of them cured it one way or another. And in the world at large, between 1% and 2% of the population is going to have some cataclysmic life event that causes them to not be able to pay their bills. Unfortunately, life can be cruel. Someone may have a death in the family or have serious injury or
an illness develops.
And it causes foreclosure. So when you hear the headlines that foreclosures have gone up, 3,000%, well, from zero.
What are you telling people to read beyond the headlines?
Yes.
No.
Look at the actual numbers. I mean, how many millions of people do we have living here? So if you see that there's 400 foreclosures, that's not a very big number.
3.5 million people or whatever there are now here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if you think you're going to be the smart Joe Blow, I have a W-2 job, you're going to be the one beating the path to the trustee sale and beating out these investors who totally understand how to buy foreclosures, you are beyond naive. That is not a game for someone who's not a professional. It's just not. And I've been on those courtroom steps.
Leave those reality shows about flippers to entertainment and don't try to go down that pathway, right?
Has the flipping market, everybody seems to agree, it's kind of gone in this
Well,
market.
of course.
Yeah.
Because you can't buy low and sell high now.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. You can buy moderately, and you could pay way too much to fix it because the cost of goods is still costly, and then you can sell it moderately. So you could take a really nice negative loss if you need a write-off, then go flip a house.
Yeah.
I want to jump back into one point we already touched on, and that's the idea of the silver tsunami here is such an ever-present force in Orange County real estate. And, as we said, they're not going anywhere. Part of it's a lifestyle decision. but also they are able to adjust their homes so that they're safer, more accommodating, but also that refinance market.
You know, if if I owned a home, and I do own a home, but if I owned a home that was now worth $3 million and I had a $600,000 loan on it at 2.8%, it would be stupid to sell it right now. It just would. And these people aren't stupid, and they're not selling.
Right. And with new products like reverse mortgages, which are so different than they were decades ago, and unfortunately sometimes still hold that negative
Stigma.
connotation, that stigma. But you're a big fan of those as well. And I know on this show we had one expert, and you're talking about as part of your series next year for our aging population to look at things like reverse mortgages.
You know, I really cannot underscore enough. Again, being an advocate, being a real estate advisor, being an analyst. Please hear me, people. We need to go beyond looking at buying a house as this investment in a silo. It's not. It is part of the whole of your financial landscape. And particularly now when there's so much unrest and uncertainty globally. I mean, things are unstable in Europe, of course, because of the Ukraine war. We have political unrest everywhere, quite frankly, and the markets have been responding in a sort of a rocky fashion. So what I'm advising my clients is, if you are eligible to buy a home with a reverse mortgage, you really need to look at that, because what that means is that you won't have to pay your monthly loan payment. You'll have to pay your taxes and your insurance. But if you're in your 60s or 70s, odds are good you're going to outlive your investments, because most of us didn't plan to live to be 100. And that number is not far-fetched.
That is a scary thing you just throw out casually here, and that's what
It is.
my biggest fear in life.
It is
the
the
good
truth.
news is we're going to be 90. The bad news is we're going to be
We're
90.
going to be
90.
90. So we need to take a look at the reverse mortgage, because in most people's situation, that means you're going to save between $3,000 and $4,000 a month on a housing payment you're not making. Yeah, the balance of your mortgage is going up over time, but so what? So what? You have other assets. You're taking that monthly money and you're investing it in other ways to make sure that you're growing your retirement so you can take care of yourself when you live an extra couple decades. You know, I wish I could get a reverse mortgage. I don't have enough equity in my house, and I'm not quite old enough to make that make sense. But as soon as I can, people, I will. I'm going to drink my own Kool-Aid.
I love it. You're walking the walk and talking the talk.
Yeah, yeah. So let's put a pin in that and have Paul say a little word about our sponsors, huh?
As always, we're proud to say that Ford and DiUlio, a Orange County boutique litigation firm, supports this show. They've got experienced attorneys from the big law firms, and they bring them to bear for average clients everywhere who are looking for more of a, well, kind of a boutique experience here. And what do you get in a boutique experience? Well, you get people who are there for you, who really are trying to be efficient and effective, where they engage in the relentless pursuit of their clients' goals, and whether that's in litigation, mediation, or a trial. They're there to help you. They've got the experience to do it, and if you need help, they're the place to start. FordDiulio.com, FordDiulio, FordDiulio.com. So I'm really very sobering stats you gave this morning here, from a very flippant start to a very serious conclusion. And the conclusion I hear is inventory isn't going to increase in Orange County, partly because there's no place to build new stuff, and this hope that they were going to build little backyard units, that's being stymied left and right. I don't think people are embracing that. Cities certainly aren't embracing that. So where are you going to build new stuff? Nowhere.
Right.
Very few places. Maybe
Right.
there's a few tear downs and a few other things they'll try and figure out how to do, but remodels and stuff. And the old population that everybody assumed was going to leave ain't leaving.
They're not. They're not. And Paul, to go back to what you had said about people not building, I do believe the lawsuits are going to compel municipalities to comply. But even if people are getting their plans to build approved today, it's going to be well into next year before it's done.
Oh, yeah.
So those units aren't going to hit the market as available units until probably Q3 and Q4 of 2023. And then I do think we're going to start to see a little bit more inventory, which is wonderful because the demand is there. Millennials are forming households, and mom and dad are sick of having their adult children living at home. They're done with it. So the consumers are going to be there to gobble up that inventory. Prices aren't going to fall then. It's just going to be a very static, stable year. So
And that's the reality. Wendy, what you presented today and what's forthcoming in your market report is really that ho hum stable
Yeah.
is better than doom and gloom.
Yes.
And we may not like the numbers, but there really is no need for fear either.
Exactly. And anyone who's listening to this now has tools in their tool belt. Take a look at lipsticks. Yes, we tend to wear more festive colors during the holidays, but overall, take a look at what lipstick colors you're seeing. And when you see nudes and calmer tones, you'll know that's a sign of financial comfort. And when you're in the locker room, just take a little peek at the underwear, right? If things aren't tattered, things are good. And pay attention at the holiday parties. If there's a lot of champagne pouring, you can smile and know it's going to be okay. It really is. If it wasn't, I would tell you, but it is.
So we can say, cheers.
Exactly.
Cheers to everyone. Okay, you're going to have your market report. Then what? What else can we expect from you for the remainder of 2022?
Oh my goodness. Well, we have Rick Sharka coming on next week, and he and I are going to compare opinions about what's coming on in 2023. And we're just, I don't know. What are you going to do, Carrie? You're my brand officer.
Excellent. Well, well, if you want to subscribe to Wendy's market report, go to realveracity.com, or you could follow Wendy on social media at The Real Wendy Ross, and then on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
And I look forward to not just where the market's going, but how it's going to change, because things have got to change. If you've got that much demand and that little inventory, then people are going to get creative. They're either going to go up, or they're going to build stuff in the backyards, or they're going to give up on the idea of owning, and they're going to it's going to be Manhattan. They're going to rent for the rest of their lives here, or downtown San Francisco or something. I don't know, but it's got to adapt. It can't stay stagnant like that.
Well, I think it's also important just to listen to Wendy's data, because it actually is refuting some of those old tired wives' tales about Orange County too. So it also, it's really up to us to not be fearful of how the market is changing, and to use this knowledge to get ahead of the curve.
Make informed decisions,
Exactly.
because waiting another year to buy a house because you think prices are going to fall is not smart. It's not. If you can get into a house today, I can help you get an interest rate, well below market rates. Don't let that stop you. That's silly. There are fine workarounds for that. But get into the house now, because a year of the tax benefit is real money. It's real stinking money, people. And leaving that on the table is foolish.
Okay, Wendy, I heard there's a bottle of champagne chilling for us.
Let's go get it.
Let's go get it.
Somewhere. We'll pop that champagne here.
See you next week, everyone.